I remember when I started my company, you would always read these stats about how many companies fail in the first year, 5 years, 10 years. The stats aren't very encouraging.
You're a jungle cat and jungle motives. The push to achieve, the push to be efficient, to accomplish is what helped you create the company. And then there's also this, I want to be careful. I want to build people up. I want to treat people the way they want to be treated and the way I want to be treated. And these two things are always going to be fighting with each other a little bit. And the beauty's in how you balance them out.
I would tell people to make sure they bring in the best talent they can from the get-go, even if that means sacrificing your own personal income or whatnot.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inner Work. So happy to have you, and so happy to have my good friend Paul Coury as a guest today. He's the founder and CEO of Coury Hospitality, and I can speak to this. He's a visionary leader in the lifestyle hotel industry, and Paul's strategic leadership has shaped a multi-award-winning portfolio renowned for immersive design, exceptional service, and distinctive guest experiences. And Paul, your first hotel was the Ambassador Hotel Tulsa. Wasn't that right?
Hi, Marianne. Yeah, it was. We opened that in 1999. In fact, to this month is the 25th anniversary and the 100th anniversary of the building. The building was
Wow.
constructed in 25. So,
It's amazing. Congratulations.
yeah.
That's a big marker. And so Ambassador Tulsa is one of several Ambassador properties.
There are 4 ambassadors, and they're each historical renovations, and they're located in the Midwest: Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Kansas City, and Wichita.
It's amazing. And this lifestyle language has been a part of the inspiration for you and what you've built. And each of your properties seeks to focus that local culture
Right.
and capture that. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's funny, when we did our first hotel, and we were thinking about the idea of doing a hotel. The word boutique hotel was just kind of evolving. And
Mhm.
the leader in that industry was probably Kimpton, and they were doing a lot of that in San Francisco. They were buying old buildings and converting them to boutique hotels driven by food and beverage.
Yeah.
And so it's funny looking back at the original platform and thesis of what this is, that is now exactly what everybody is trying to do. Not necessarily historical buildings, but with properties, making them community gathering spots driven by food and beverage. And oh, by the way, you have a place to sleep.
Yeah. I mean, it is this whole experience, and you were really a forerunner of that.
You know, it's interesting. I haven't really thought of myself that way with a few properties, but I definitely was playing in the briar patch early on when people were just, doing it. People like Barry Sternlicht had developed the W Hotel, which was this very, outside of the box, progressive, provocative, whatever word you want to use. So, and then Ian Schrager was playing in that world and doing
That's
things
right.
in Miami Beach and New York. And, he was really another leader in that industry also.
It's incredible. And so first hotel in 99, what was that like being saying to people, "I'm gonna start a hotel"?
It was tough. I mean, I'll be honest. I think I had 20 investors. you know, Everyone had they're like, their risk tolerance was this much, right? And so it
Mhm.
took a lot of bodies. And I think we probably had 10 or 15 lenders say no, and finally found
Mm.
one to say yes. And, you know, it was probably my only deal that was on
Yeah,
the table. And you've got to make them believe that, you've got 5 other deals that they're competing against. So,
absolutely.
so anyway,
Some showmanship.
yeah, well, yeah, I look back on how hard that was. And I
Yeah.
think the cost of the building, which we still own, to renovate it was only $6 million, and that's just hilarious. I mean, that wouldn't even hardly buy your furniture and fixtures now.
Yeah, that would be your outdoor space,
Yeah.
right? Your
Yeah.
backyard or
Yeah,
whatever.
maybe a bit more, but yeah, it wouldn't
Yeah.
go very far. It sure wouldn't go
Yeah.
very far.
Did it so that first round was a heavy lift. Did it
Okay.
start to get easier?
Yeah, I think it got easier. So much of uh, the hospitality world is timing with the
Mhm,
economy, and
mhm,
and from the time we did that, let's just start with the year 2000.
yeah,
As the kind of the marker. Gosh, we've had 6 cycles, major cycles,
that's right.
and interest rates have. I think when we started, they were probably at 8 or 9. They got down to 2 or 3, and now they're back up to 8 or 9. So
Yeah,
it's there's always an obstacle. Seems like you
mhm,
know it's either construction cost or uh, you know sometimes labor is a factor. COVID labor became probably the biggest challenge. And then interest rates, come into play, and then the patterns of the consumer, and so fortunately, the world of lifestyle boutique is a very high demand world, and I think in some of the downturns we've seen, even the one now that we're
yeah,
experiencing, that sector is holding together better than a lot of the other ones, and that's been my experience with that for 25 years.
yeah, yeah. The one of the things I'm experiencing, the inner work that I'm doing these days is as I try to scale my business, the pressure that I can handle has to increase, my ability to tolerate it and deal with the strain. And I'm imagining you starting your first hotel, and then at what level do you feel like you're starting over? And you mentioned these cycles. What have your cycles of stress been like?
You know, Fortunately, I am just one of those people. I just look at stress as just it's just another day, and it's a puzzle that you've got to figure out how to solve the 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 solution for.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
so I'm lucky in that regard that it doesn't uh, drive me or consume me. And if anything, maybe it causes me to be a little bit more focused or even become hyper focused
mm,
and attention to details
mhm,
and watching other people around me now in the industry and looking at what makes someone handle that better. Seems like the people that just stay steady and become a little bit more intense and focus better do do probably better. They
yeah,
don't overreact. They don't, but they make good decisions and they
yeah.
solve the puzzle.
Steadiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, showing up over time. Have you always had that? I would say it's a gift. Have you always had that ability, or did you have to learn that?
No, I've always been that way. I've always been a risk taker but controlled risk taker. I look at my risk compared to some people and I don't even consider myself a risk taker compared to some people, but uh so it just to me was just what you do, right? And so whether you're growing or whether you're looking at 2 or 3 more opportunities to develop something or open a hotel, it just was seemed very normal to me and didn't
Yeah.
didn't seem to put things out of kilter or out of
Mhm.
perspective.
Yeah. I'd say that there has to be a natural resilience to you to approach it that way, and this you mentioned the healthy risk taking and a sense of confidence that this is the natural course. This is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember when I started my company, you would always read these stats about how many companies fail in the first year, 5 years, 10 years. I mean, the stats aren't very encouraging.
No.
I mean, when you look at 5 and 10 years, I think the failure rate's like 80 or 90%.
It is. It is.
It's crazy. So,
Yeah.
um, I think that uh, some people are driven by uh, different things, right? So some are money driven, some are ego driven, some are about making the world a better place, and I would like to think I've got a good, healthy blend of all 3 of those. right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the balance of, I mean, you don't do something that you are going to make money on, and you don't take a risk that is too risky and
Right.
puts everything you built at risk. And sometimes the factors outside of that are out of your control come into play and make that last part more difficult, right?
Yeah.
I mean, COVID. I mean, I used to have a boss in banking, and he would say, "This deal will never go bad unless there's Armageddon," right?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
and COVID was Armageddon,
Absolutely.
and
He
so
jinxed you.
yeah, and I mean, it wasn't just me, right? It was every
Yeah.
industry, every facet of the world, and we're still kind of trying to
Yeah.
figure it all out. But um, uh, so anyway,
Yeah.
I think that balance of those three components is you know, and clearly on my designs, I want it to be something that represents my like, I take really good care of my properties, and
Yeah.
we don't skimp on the money, we reinvest the money. I'd rather
Mhm.
put the money back in than take a distribution to make sure that the experience is still good.
Yeah.
And, some of these assets now have some age on them. I still own my 4 original ambassadors,
Yeah.
and so you'll go in there, like, I was just in one of them, and I noticed some things that I wasn't happy with, and so I immediately made a phone call to our purchasing department, said, "We need to buy X, Y, and Z," and scrambled around and found a couple of those things right away because to me, that's just how it reflects on us, and
That's right.
I can't live if I see something, I'm like, "Wow, that's not how I wanna be thought of as a company."
Well, your name is on the company, right? And you are personified in it, and I think that's something that makes Corey really special, and in the work that we've gotten to do together, your personal touch, that the team members want to see you, and we saw that in surveys. People wanted to make sure as the organization was growing that we don't lose the sense of who Corey is, and that's a representation of you and
Yeah.
how you've committed to the organization.
You know, you bring that up, and I have told people this. In fact, I just yesterday, I think, said this to someone. So we did our first survey, if you recall, on the company. And I think maybe then what we have 400 or 500 employees, 300, I don't know,
Mhm.
500, 600. And the the thing that hit me in the face hard was that they didn't feel like they knew what they didn't feel like they were getting good information from the company or what were feeling
Mhm.
connected, if you will.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
really deeply bothered me. And we made some immediate changes. So we started the CEO address. We started some monthly
Right.
calls, guidance calls with leadership. And then in our recent surveys, we're running almost at 90% in the high 80s. Um, and now with almost 3,500 employees or 3,600
Right.
employees. So, yeah, I mean, that was a wake up call for me. And again, that was after COVID. So
Right.
it was a very disruptive time, and everybody was feeling, maybe insecure or lost or whatever, and everybody, right? So,
That's right.
uh, I think some of that was maybe a manifestation of that, but also, um, made me, I mean, and my goal is to still feel like a family company, even though we're not
Yes.
anymore, to feel that
Yeah.
way and people
Mhm.
feel connected. That's hard to do with 37 hotels now. I can't make it to every one of them regularly, but we do it through the training and orientation and onboarding and the calls that we have, with
Yeah.
the leadership calls and the
Yeah.
and CEO addresses.
Yeah, absolutely, and you've got properties that you own, properties that you manage, so there are different ways that you interface with those different parts of the organization, but that's been a focus to retain that high touch,
Right.
and you got feedback, and this is what we said starting out, when you get the feedback, you have to respond, and you did in big ways and looked at how to make it sustainable and how to build the system so that as you went from, I think when we started working together, there were 9 or 11 properties? So to
Yeah.
have this
Yeah.
level of growth and have people still feel solid and connected to the organization is tremendous. I mean, congrats.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. It's a goal, right? And uh it's funny, I can remember some interviews a couple years ago and they'd say, "Hey, what's your goal? How many hotels do you want to have?" And you'd think, "Well, maybe 25." And I could see that happening. And now here we are at 37. And if someone said, "When will you be at 50?" I don't, again, those are big
End of the
jumps.
year?
No,
But
yeah.
that's how it
No,
happens. You're
yeah.
putting these deals together. I mean, it's your first deal over and over and over,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And so there's some scale now, maybe where you're trying to find relationships where they bring 4 or 5 hotels instead of one to the table because then
Yeah.
you can develop more of a relationship, which we really, that's who we are. We don't, my goal is not to be in 100 hotels. My goal is to have whatever number of hotels we have and still be connected, still be very responsive and have the owners or whatnot have access to me in the company.
That's right. Yeah, I know we focused on helping build that top tier leadership team so that the scalability was possible.
Right.
What does your leadership world look like now? Because you don't have to be involved in every decision the way you used to be.
Yeah, and believe me, I like it much better this way. Yeah. So, yeah, I had to make some tough decisions on some key positions and as you know, did that. And it was really helpful because I went to a different level of talent, which,
Yeah.
a lot of times you're limited on your budget, right? And your ability, uh, you know, to bring someone in at a high level. And when you start getting enough asset base, you can up the game. And so
Mhm.
we've definitely done that across the board.
Yeah,
And we're seeing a direct correlation to that.
absolutely.
And so I don't have to be involved. Before it was like everyone would say, what does Paul think? What
Mhm.
does a run it by Paul? And I don't want that. I'm not a micromanager. I'm a delegator and I want people that are better than I am and know more than I do and can tell me what my decision needs to be. And I'm gonna hopefully just ratify it or say, yeah, maybe we should modify it this way. But so
Right.
I'm definitely in that type position now, and I'm working.
Yay.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so that doesn't mean I still don't send out text at 4 in the morning or 10 or 11 at night. And
Mhm.
uh uh but it allows me to spend more time on the business development side, which I enjoy. Uh Meeting people, looking at deals. We're developing a couple hotels right now that are under construction and soon to be, and so that takes a lot of my time from the design standpoint and the, setting it up for success.
Yeah.
But the day-to-day people side, I'm not nearly as involved as I used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And you worked hard to build the infrastructure to be at this spot. As you look back being an industry trailblazer and you look back, what was a crossroads for you? What was a moment of leadership challenge?
Hmm, that's a good question. There's just a point where you feel like, for me anyway, if I'm making all the key decisions, something's wrong.
Mm, yeah.
And look, I'm glad I'm glad to make decisions. I feel like I can make generally the right ones or the best decision. But I knew that if I wanted to grow, that wasn't sustainable.
Yeah.
And you're going to build a company where you're just everyone's there at your leisure and
Mhm.
they really aren't. They're there to support you, but not advise you or just.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I did. It was like an epiphany on that, and I knew that
Mhm.
that had to change.
Yeah. 'Cause, like, you're the lever on which everything rests, right? Every decision and there's a it's I feel like that if you're building something new, it kind of has to start that way because
Yeah.
it's all according to your vision.
Yeah, your DNA has
Then
to trickle down.
yeah, but
It's
then you reach that point where you're the blocker.
yeah. Well, you definitely, uh when you're doing that, you feel to me anyway, it felt like something wasn't right. You know,
Mhm.
you just know that if you're the one doing that, you don't have the right team.
Yeah. Yeah. So what when you had that realization, what did you shift in? What did you start doing differently?
Um, well, it's the mindset. Look, I like I said, I always wanted to have people that are better than I am at things, but it was just a matter of budget. So
Yep.
the mindset finally was, you just got to do it, and you got to be
Change it.
committed, right? And you've got to think differently. And to me, it was never a matter of giving up the resources.
Mhm.
It was, um, what if the growth doesn't come? What if you're burdened with all this? And again, like I said, I will take risks, but I'm really not super aggressive risk taker. And I mean, that's a risk when your payroll, you know, doubles and triples, and now literally 10 times more than what it was.
Yeah,
You've gotta just have confidence that you're gonna keep bringing in the additional
that's
business
right.
to help support that engine.
Well, and that's where your effort shifts, especially as the founder and the chief development officer, so to speak, is you've got to keep that engine growing, right? In
Yeah.
order to provide, and that's, I sympathize with that. That's where we are right now, trying to scale, is bringing on full time team members. Whoa, our cash flow significantly changed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I can't hang on to that. This is the work I really like to do, and I wanna be hands-on. I've gotta let that stuff go and trust my people, and I've had to reassess ego around that too.
Yeah.
If I'm not doing those things, does that mean I'm not as valuable of a contributor?
Yeah. Well, um, it's funny if you're comfortable being a leader, and that's probably your natural role. Remember these what were those tests that we took?
Oh, yeah, jungle motives.
Yeah, yeah, John.
Yes.
If,
You're a tiger.
yeah, yeah, I was whatever, tiger, eagle, what there was, it was like I was, but you realize that even when you bring those people on, you're in a meeting, if something isn't right, it'll hit you in the face immediately.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, uh, what I've tried to do though the last couple of years is, instead of being the person in the meeting, because I was used to people relying on me to make a decision, be the leader, and make the call. Then I had to learn to step back and be comfortable with someone else doing that, and not, uh, they say you shouldn't should on somebody. You don't should on them. So you don't say what you should have done, or you don't say, um, why would you do that? So those are things I never will do. But I may, at the end, after hearing something's not right, I may say, I don't know if that's, maybe we need to rethink that, or we need to consider this. And sometimes I'm still, ending up going with what the prevailing thought was, or
Yeah.
what someone else directed. But the things do, when you're a leader, I think the things hit you quickly that you need to question.
Absolutely, and that's an important part of the role, right? It's not like we're absent now, so bye-bye. I don't there's still guidance that we provide,
Yeah.
but you're speaking to the actors have changed a little bit, and our part to play
Right.
is different and sometimes difficult for us to hang in that spot as you made these shifts and you empowered people. So you leveled up your talent, you empowered people in their roles. Were there moments that you found you're like, "Ugh, I just want to jump back in there."
Um, Yeah, maybe some, but I think more than anything, the thing that can still frustrate me is, like if I had a list of 10 things in front of me now, I want those things off my list.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, this would be a little bit of an idiosyncrasy, but also maybe a curse, or whatever. But if I ask for some information or want something, I need it quickly. I don't,
Mhm.
and so I still struggle with slow results or something that doesn't get done, and you have to ask a second or third time. And I think the efficiency of knocking off things that are on your list, if you will, or in your mind, or I think that's important in the
Yeah.
process of running a company,
Mhm.
and if you run if you don't make people accountable, and that was another thing that I needed to learn to make people accountable, or you don't have that sense of urgency,
Yeah.
it reflects in how people perceive your company.
That's right. And it impacts the relationships even when, as you were caring about people, wanting to support people, but it ends up causing other breakdowns.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you and sometimes you just better to communicate bluntly, in a nice, respectful way, but just be I think and there were times in my life I've struggled with delivering the news because confrontation can be tough, and
Yeah.
some people are better at that. I would say again, my current leadership is better at that, and I like that. You need some of that, and
Yeah.
when you're as big
Yeah.
as we are to
Yeah. You
uh,
do.
have accountability.
Yeah. Well, you've worked hard to enjoy the position that you're in now. And every step along the way has been hard won. And I hear you saying you've recognized those times that there were opportunities to shift and grow, and when there were people who could step in and do that thing better, so that it allowed you to free yourself up to do your best work, to contribute your genius.
Right. I like that. Yeah, and I think the the part that's still important to me that I still want to figure out how to do, and that's impart my DNA into the culture of the company, and I gosh, you in life you hear this term so many different ways, the golden rule, right?
Mhm.
You hear so many versions of what that is, and it can be a religious term, it can be a business term, it can be, but however you use that word or spin that phrase, it's the most important thing, business.
Mm.
And
Absolutely.
if you respect people and you treat them as if you would expect to be treated, you won't have you avoid so many issues. And believe me, there are people that even when you do that, don't see it. They don't want to
Right.
see it if they're upset or they feel
Mhm.
wronged or something. And you have to learn to kind of plow through that because it can bother you, right? If
Yeah.
you you you're insulted sometimes because
Sure.
you're like, oh my God, are you kidding me? That's all I'm trying to do.
Right.
But, again, that's something that, when we talk about our company and our growth and our platform we present to people, culture's still the number one lead point with our
Yeah.
company.
Yeah. It's huge.
Yeah,
And I think you can't the things that you're talking about, you can't do that fast. You can't do that efficiently. So it's this you and I remember it's jungle cat. You're a jungle cat and jungle motives. The push to achieve, the push to be efficient, to accomplish is what helped you create the company, and then there's also this, I want to be careful, I want to build people up, I want to treat people the way they wanna be treated and the way I wanna be treated, and these 2 things are always gonna be kind of, fighting with each other a little bit, and the beauty's in how you balance them out.
so, yeah, we're trying to pick partners that share our same, philosophy and approach to how we do things because if they don't share that and it's their property, they may not buy into some of the platforms we've created
Absolutely.
for our employees, some of our bonus programs and things like that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, you know, we're going to try to be mindful of that as we grow.
Mhm.
And that'll help, if you will, preserve the brand and make sure that we stay true to who we want to be.
That's right. That's right. As you think back on Paul's journey and everything that you've learned, and know that our listeners can really gain from and learn from your experience, what would you tell those people who are maybe trying to scale an organization or have a vision that they want to bring to life? What advice would you offer them?
Um, I thought about this a couple. So my company will be 40 years old in January.
It's
So
amazing.
had a long time to think about this.
Good. I can't believe that you were only 10 when you started your company.
Yeah, I wish. Um, I would tell people to make sure they bring in the best talent they can from the get-go. Even if that means sacrificing your own personal income or whatnot. And I think, when I first started, gosh, we've had different cycles in the company where we've been different sizes. And when within 5 years of starting my company, we had probably 15 employees or 20 employees, which was a lot.
Yeah.
But, I also had a family of four, or, 3 to 4 kids. That fourth came along. And then you've got business commitments. You bought assets that require some capital. So,
Mhm.
and you don't, I didn't make some of those decisions that I should have. And I think, looking back, I could have been, in a different, um, place with my growth platform probably over time.
Earlier. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And, yeah, so that would be, and then I think that the markets you pick to in my world, the markets you pick to do business in are really critical. And
Mhm.
for us, moving our headquarters to Dallas and playing in this briar patch was huge and really, really helpful.
Awesome. We're so glad to have you in North Texas.
Yeah, I'm
Awesome.
I'm just a cousin from Oklahoma.
That's right. Exactly right. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing some of your inner journey as a leader. I know I've learned from it over the last several years, and so many people can. And thank you for all that you offer to Coury Hospitality and to our whole country, because you're all over the country now.
Well, Marianne, thank you for coming along at a real critical time for us and helping us. You've served many hats with me, including a coach, and so, but I give you a lot of credit for helping us kind of work through some of those challenges that we had.
Well, it's truly been an honor, and I appreciate you, grateful for you. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us on Inner Work and this incredible time that we've gotten to have with Paul Coury. We'll see everybody really soon.
Bye.
Bye.